Chapter 17. How an Arch Bridge Works. Katrina was crying. Jessie tried to block out the sound, but it was nearly impossible. I miss Pixie, Katrina managed to say between wails. We all do, said Lorelai. Jessie sat up. She didn't like it when statements were made without facts to support them. Was it true? Did everybody miss Pixie? Let's take a vote, said Jessie. She looked around the classroom. Mrs. Finney was talking on the classroom telephone. She spent an awful lot of time doing that for someone who was supposed to be substitute teaching. But it was the last day of summer fun exploration camp, and both the kids and Mrs. Finney seemed to have reached an agreement. They could do what they wanted as long as she could do what she wanted. Sadly, everyone had lost interest in making fairy houses. Without Pixie, there just didn't seem to be much point. The kids, who had been slumping on their art stools with nothing to do, sat up and looked at Jessie. Everyone liked voting. It was a chance to come together or have an argument. Either way, it was more interesting than doing nothing. Who here Mrs. Pixie? 5 hands shot in the air, actually 6 because Katrina raised both. Jessie had not raised her hand and neither had Becky. But Jessie was taking the time to think about something she hadn't thought about before. Did she really miss Pixie? Jessie made a list in her head. Pixie was not a real grown-up or a real teacher. She dressed in silly costumes when it wasn't Halloween. She read terrible stories that weren't even true. And she told lies about fairies, particularly to Katerina. On the other hand, Pixie always said nice things about Jessie's fairy houses and bridges, and Jessie liked getting complaints. Also, Pixie played the ukulele really well, and she had a pretty singing voice, even though it cracked on the highest notes. She had a friendly smile. She kept her hands clean, which was important to Jessie. And after that first time, she never tried to touch Jessie again, not even a light hand on her shoulder, which some people never seem to understand, even when Jessie explained it very carefully to them. But Pixie had understood that part of Jessie right away, and so she saved all her hugs and snuggles for Katerina, who loved sitting on Pixie's lap during the fairy circle at the end of the day. Most of all, though, Pixie had done her best. Doing your best mattered Jessie. It wasn't one of the reasons she got so angry at Mrs. Finney, who never seemed to try at all. Mrs. Finney was like a big droopy white flag, constantly surrendering without a fight. Yes, Jessie missed Pixie. She raised her hand. That left only Becky, who still sat by herself at the far end of the last art table. I don't care, she said. I don't miss her. She was a terrible teacher. Teacher? That reminded Jessie of her plan. She was going to teach the whole class something really important about bridges. She had prepared yesterday at home for this best and final experiment. Well, said Mrs. Finney, hanging up the phone and turning her attention to the class. The students stared at her with expectant looks on their faces. Was she going to tell them what the phone call had been about? Would she direct them in an activity? Was there any news of Pixie? What's the plan for today? She asked as she turned to look at Jessie. It was a good thing Jessie had something in mind. Otherwise, this summer fun exploration camp would go right off the rails. I'm going to show how an arch bridge works, Jessie said, leaving the art table with a finished bridge and standing at the front of the classroom. And then we are all going to make an arch bridge together. Quickly, she drew the same drawing on the whiteboard that she had shown Evan earlier. She told everyone about the ancient Romans, how they had invented a special kind of waterproof cement called pozzolana, made from the ash that blew out of the Mount Vesuvius volcano, how they devised a way to build the underwater using something called the Copan Dam, how their bridges were still standing and cars and trucks passed over them every day, even though the bridges were made than 2,000 years old. All of this knowledge had been in a special book, the Great Big Book of Bridges, and even though the book was glued shut and could never be opened again, Jessie could still pass all of this important scientific knowledge on to the students at camp. She was sad that her book was ruined, and she didn't understand why Becky had done it. But there was no way anyone could lock up the knowledge of bridge building. Even if her book was destroyed, Jessie still knew what made an arch bridge stay standing for thousands of years. That can't work, said Andrea, looking at Jessie's diagram. It would fall apart, said David, moving his hands into the shape of an arch, then splitting them open, especially if those stones weigh 8 tons each. It would totally collapse, said Lorelai. I believe Jessie, said Katerina stubbornly. Jessie always tells the truth. Thanks, said Jessie, looking at Katerina. But I'm glad the rest of you have doubts, because the scientists never just believe what someone tells them. Scientists say, prove it, so I'm going to prove it to you. She reached into her pockets and pulled out 2 handfuls of clay blocks. The blocks were all identical, and they looked just like the heavy Roman stones in the drawing, but much smaller. Jessie gave 2 blocks to each kid. The blocks were just big enough to hold securely between a thumb and an index finger. Katrina immediately started to click her clay blocks together. They're a funny shape, she said. They remind me of something, said David, looking at Jessie. What is it they look like? Jessie rolled her eyes. Some people were no good at remembering shapes and patterns. Here's how we are going to do it, she said. I've taped these 2 pencils to the table. These are the abutment. Eva shrieked. Jessie said, but I did not, said Jessie. But everyone was laughing now, and Jessie had to wait 30 whole seconds until they settled down. I'm going to say that word again, and anyone who laughs has to go wait out in the hall while the rest of us build a Roman arch bridge. Got it? Jessie was small, but she could get people's attention when she wanted to. So the pencils are like the abutments, she said loudly. Eva wriggled madly on a stool but didn't laugh. And that's the part of the bridge that's buried deep in the ground and holds everything steady. Now, who's going to be the first to put down a block next to the pencil? Me, shouted Katerina, bouncing so hard that she slipped off her stool. The older kids didn't mind Katerina going first. Jessie showed her how to line up her blocks in just the right spot. Hold it there, don't jiggle it. You have to keep exactly where it is. Who wants to go next? And so, one by one, each student positioned 2 blocks in the growing arch that Jessie had designed. The bridge grew taller and rounder. It looked just like the picture in Jessie's book, the book that was ruined forever, the book that Becky had destroyed. There's a hole, said Katerina, dismayed. They were all holding their blocks in place, hands crisscrossing over each other and trembling just a little with the effort of keeping everything with where it was supposed to be. But Katerina was right. There was a gap at the top, like a missing tooth. It was the size of one block. Yep, said Jessie, struggling to hold her own blocks in place. We need one more. Do you have one? Asked Andrea, because this is really getting hard to hold. Of course I do, said Jessie. It's the keystone, and it's in my pocket, but I can't get it because I can't let go of my blocks. No one else could either. Everyone was desperately trying to hold their bridge blocks in place. Mrs. Finney was back on the phone, her back turned to them. Becky, help us, said Katerina. We need you to put the keystone on top. I'm not helping with any dumb bridge, said Becky. Come on, Becky, said David, and then a chorus of cries rang out. Yeah, Becky, help us out. We need a hand, like seriously. Please, said Jessie. She had planned for this moment, and she really wanted it to work, but Jessie wasn't good at guessing what other people would do. Becky made a big show of getting up from her seat and slowly walking over to the art table where all the students were clustered. Everyone started to cheer, Becky, 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 and that made Becky laugh in a sort of self-conscious way. Stop it, she said. You're all acting like dorks. But she smiled again. Jessie said, See the chain hanging out of my pocket. Just pull on it. And the keystone is on the end. Becky looked at the thin silver chain dangling delicately from Jessie's pants pocket, and her eyes grew wide. I can take it? She asked. Yes, said Jessie. It's yours anyway. It was a gift from your grandparents. That means it's yours forever. I really just wanted to teach you a lesson. I mean, this lesson about the Roman arch bridge. Becky tugged the chain out of Jessie's pocket, and the beautiful rose-quartz pendants swung hypnotically on the end of it. It's so beautiful, said Katerina in a whisper. The most rarest stone of all. It is not, said Jessie. Quartz is very common. That's a fact, but it doesn't matter because we don't need a rare stone right now. We just need a keystone. And that's what it is. She directed Becky to use the necklace chain like a crane to lower the keystone into place. And when it was perfectly positioned, she told everyone to let go of the clay blocks. No, said Katerina, it will all fall. The bridge won't stand up if we don't hold it. Yes, it will, said Jessie firmly. Are you sure? Asked David. We'll never know unless we try, said Jessie. Slowly, all 6 students let go of their blocks. Katerina was the last to let go. The bridge stood. The keystone held everything in place. You see, said Jessie, it's science. And science was better than any fairy tale, but it was also a little magical. They all marveled at the bridge they'd made, and then David got the idea of how to bust it up, which is always the most fun of building anything from blocks. Hey, Becky, he said, pull the keystone out of the top, like a cork out of a bottle. Should I? Asked Becky, still holding the pendant silver chain in her hand. Sure, said Jessie. We can always build it again if we want. Do it, shouted the other kids. Wait, shouted Katerina. She ran to get her trowels so that they could watch the bridge come tumbling down too. As soon as Becky pulled out the keystone, the whole bridge collapsed. Everyone clapped, which brought Mrs. Finney over to the table. She took one look at the pile of clay blocks on the table and shook her head. I really don't get kids these days. Then she wandered back to her desk and left them in peace to build and rebuild the bridge. It It was Katerina who had the idea to paint the clay blocks, so they took up the rest of the morning right up until the lunch breaks. Jessie was happy. The whole room felt lighter. She realized that as much as she had wanted Becky to stop being mean to her, she had wanted to stop being mean to Becky too. Maybe even more. And taking the necklace had been mean. Sometimes it feels good to get back at someone who's hurt you. But that doesn't always make you feel better in the end. Sometimes it takes something more to heal all the wounds. Becky wandered over to Jessie, who was taking her lunchbox out of her cubby. Jessie, said Becky, I have to tell you something. Jessie looked at Becky's face, but she couldn't read it at all. The closest she could figure was that Becky had eaten something that was giving her a very bad stomachache. But they hadn't even gone to lunch yet, so that didn't seem to make sense. My mom can't take the photo tomorrow, said Becky. She got something else she needs to do. What does she need to do? Asked Jessie. I don't remember, said Becky. Something she said, and she asked me to tell you. Why didn't you tell me before? Asked Jessie. You waited all morning. Why? I didn't. It's not that long that I waited. I forgot about it, and then, well, we did the bridge thing, and you gave me back my necklace. Becky's face was slowly turning a deep crimson. Jessie noticed the color rise from her neck and creep up her cheeks. It was like a sunset in reverse. Why are you so red? Asked Jessie. She didn't understand at all what was going on. How could Becky's mother change her mind? When Jessie's mother made a promise, she stuck to it. Or had a good reason not to. Becky's hands flew up to her cheeks, as if by covering them she could make the red disappear. I'm not red, and I'm telling you now. What does it matter when I tell you? She can't do it, so you don't need to take the bridge to the stream this afternoon. But we are all going to do that, said Katerina loudly. It was going to be like a parade. And Jessie said I could lead the way with my chores. She held up the chores, one in each hand, as if they were as disappointed as she was. It's not my fault, said Becky, her voice rising. It wasn't my idea in the first place, and I always get stuck in the middle like this. It isn't fair. By now, all the students in the camp class had gathered around their cubbies and were listening to the drama in the hallway. Jessie looked at David to see if he understood what was going on, but he had a strange look on his face that seemed to say he was as puzzled as Jessie. Becky's face was still bright red, and she looked like her stomachache had reached the point when something might actually come up. Are you doing this to be mean to me? Asked Jessie. I'm not being mean. Becky turned to look at all the other students who were staring at her with a red face and stammering answers that sounded like lies. I'm not mean, and this isn't fair. She pulled her own lunchbox down from the shelf and said in a sharp voice that sounded like little firecrackers exploding. Fine, I'll tell my mother to change her plans. She'll meet you at the bridge by the stream and take your picture. Happy? Katrina cheered and then danced with her chores, one in each hand. Becky pushed past Jessie and returned to the classroom. David walked over. What do you think that was about? He asked Jessie. I don't know. All I care is that I get to have my picture in the paper. Jessie smiled. She would send a copy to her father. I think she made up the part about her mom not being able to take the picture. I bet it makes her mad that her mom is paying attention to you. I guess she still doesn't like you. Jessie shrugged. I didn't understand Becky when we were in second grade, and I don't understand her right now. I guess that's just the way it is with some people. I don't know, said David. There's just something strange about her making up that story. Lies. Jessie really didn't like them. As far as she was concerned, there was no good reason to tell a lie. She would talk to Evan when she got home. Maybe he could explain why Becky was still being mean to her, even after Jessie gave her back the Keystone necklace.